Hi, this is Shanna at CoroWare. Last week in Time magazine, they had an article about the robot economy. And for the most part, it was a discussion about the winners and the losers in the robot economy. And mostly he was thinking there are losers, that we continue to lose a lot of jobs to robots. And that seems to be a common theme with many economists and economic writers, that robots are costing a lot more jobs than they create. And in the article, he makes it very clear that most of the time robots have created a great number of jobs. However, certain kinds of jobs disappear. There are far fewer longshoremen now than there were 50 years ago, and that's because much of the shipping transfer is done by robot cranes. Robots are great for doing repetitive tasks. He does talk about a robot driver demonstration that was done in Japan with a convoy and whether or not that will replace truckers. Well, it may someday, but conditions are not ripe for that. It requires good roads. It requires that the roads are well maintained, that there are clean, easy to read dividing lines on the roads, the striping, and things like that. And I think it's interesting that every time there is a change in technology, people's jobs change. The way we approach work changes, and that causes a great deal of fear. People always want things to be the same. If you look back to one of the common discussions when you talk about the automobile coming in, buggy whip manufacturers did not fare well with the changeover from horses providing most of the transportation to cars providing most of the transportation. And that will be true with any revolution in technology. A number of things change. Most of the jobs that most office workers do now didn't exist 50 years ago. Some of them did. But when you look at the number of people who are in support positions for the technology, none of those jobs existed. When you look at the skill level and the number of things that people are required to do, none of that existed. I watched some of that transfer take place when some of the attorneys that I worked for quite a while ago were leery about learning to use a computer because, after all, only secretaries typed. That's changed significantly. If you can't keyboard now, you're being left behind. And so I think that many of these articles really are about our insecurity and inability to predict the future. Things are going to change. Things constantly change. And most of us like to be able to predict where that change is coming from and where it's going. Maybe college won't be as necessary in the future because the kinds of work that we do changes. And maybe we go back to learning in apprenticeships, because I can tell you, someone who has never done troubleshooting, they aren't going to learn troubleshooting from a book. It's a hands-on experience. That sounds to me like it's an apprenticeship. And the more technology invades our lives, the more jobs are created for people who can manage and help with that technology. It's just a different set of jobs and a different set of skills. How about you? Are you afraid of the future and where things are going? I think when you look at the outcomes, for example, with certain kinds of surgery, with robot surgery, it's far better than with people. Not all of the surgeries yet, but most of them are. I think the future offers great promise. Are we going to be dragged into it kicking and screaming? Or are we going there with our heads up and looking ahead? Thanks for listening.